Talk 1110 99.3 WBTA. Reminder, it is Tuesday, although it does feel like Monday. But it's Tuesday, and at 2 o'clock we'll talk with Tim Moore, the Speaker of the North Carolina House. Right now we're talking about jobs, and kind of curious what folks are seeing right now, because I know that the unemployment benefit is getting ready. It's now expiring. The extra federal unemployment benefit is expiring, and so is that going to now help? Are we going to see a bunch of people now going into the job market that were sitting on the sidelines? And I'm also kind of curious, would you hire somebody that's been sitting out for so long? Now, the other side of this is that there may be like some rationality to the decision. I had a conversation with a relative of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how like the federal money that they've just been given because they've got 2 kids. So now they get this money from the federal government because they've got 2 kids. They increased the federal government, Joe Biden's administration, increased the food stamps, or what do they call it? The SNAP, they call it now, the food assistance program. And what that does is, we had this discussion about the welfare cliff. You essentially create so much of a gap that for somebody who is getting the benefits of a certain value, they now have to make even more money before they can replace those those benefits with their own income. So this is just a really crude example, but let's just say you're making $25,000 a year, and you get benefits to the tune of, let's say, another 15. So $25K plus $15K is $40K, which means if you want to get off of the welfare benefits, whether that's the Medicaid, whether it's the food stamps, whatever it is, if you want to get off of these different benefits, you need to now make it $15,000 extra per year, right? In order to replace that benefit value. Well, how do you do that? How do you go from a job making $25K to a job making $15 or $40K? How do you make that jump? That's the cliff. And so here's the thing also. If you're at a job making $25,000 and you start to increase a little bit, let's say you get a $10,000 raise. Let's say you go in and you're like, or you find another job, you're like, I need more money. So you go and you get yourself an extra $10K. Now you're at $35K. Well, that means you lose all the benefits because now you price yourself out. You make too much money. It's means tested, right? So you're out, and now what? Now so essentially you're making $35K, but you've lost the difference, that $5,000 difference. So it's essentially like you took a $5,000 pay cut, right? So there's a level of rationality involved here where you're saying, if I do more work, I'm going to be penalized for it. This is the perverse incentives we've created with our system. And most people agree that there should be a safety net in the system. The problem is, when does the safety net become a hammock? When does the hammock become a trap, right? When are you hurting people instead of helping? And this is one of the things that gets me with the left is like they never stop to reassess whether these programs are actually hurting people. It's another one of the ironies is also they seem to be very uninterested in the waste in these programs and the fraud and the abuse. And I've got a couple of stories here as well about fraud. Of all the people you would think that would be, watching every single dollar spent for the programs that they wanted in place, right? They lobby for the programs, they get them in place, they want to expand them all the time, they want to fund them even more. But when you have a system, you've got a program that is wasting money. Like, you're now not helping all of the people that you said you wanted to be helping. But they always seem very uninterested in pursuing that. It's always the conservatives that are like looking to, to cut out the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and whatnot. So here's another hint, though, according to the MSN story about who's to blame for the poor jobs report. Hourly worker pay surged in August. Wages went up 4.3% over the past year. That's the biggest increase since 2008, if you exclude the early days of the pandemic. Soaring pay clearly shows that businesses are still trying to hire workers or paying existing employees more so they don't leave for a higher paying job somewhere else. So Americans, by the way, have been quitting at record levels to pursue other opportunities. So that's happening too. So what you're getting also is a lot of this analysis, quote unquote, that is saying, well, this is really just, people having the freedom, the employees having the freedom to go where they want to go, and they don't have to take these jobs that they didn't want to take. And so this is what it's the free market essentially, which of course is absurd because you've got so much government intervention in it, it's hardly a free market. But how can it be, they ask at the MSN story, Jeffrey Partash, he says, how can it be that the U.S. has a labor shortage when job openings are at a record high and millions of people are not working? For one thing, millions of people are still collecting unemployment benefits that in many cases pay more than their old jobs did. That's because the federal government is temporarily doling out extra money to the unemployed during the pandemic. Other surveys show that several million people who were close to retirement age left the workforce during the pandemic. And a lot of them probably aren't going back, right? They're just early retirement. They're done. When will the supply of workers increase? Perhaps as early as this month, because the extra federal benefits expired. Though the Biden administration is telling states that they should keep paying the benefits through all of the other stimulus programs. And if the public schools reopen and they stay open, then that would also give unemployed parents more leeway to seek out a job. It's people not wanting to work. There was a fellow that I interviewed several months ago. I think I spoke about, we were talking about the wisdom of crowds. He wrote a book, When Politicians Panicked. And his belief is that the reason why everybody locked down was that we basically are wealthy enough to do it. Our society is wealthy enough in general, in total, the society, that we could just take a year off. That everybody was just like, oh, you know what? I'm just so tired. I don't want to work. And everybody just said, okay, we'll do this. That we had the ability to do it and we did it. And I think there's going to be a lot of negative ramifications. But it also highlighted a lot of problems in the economy that have existed before. I mentioned earlier about trades. I remember having this conversation 2-3 years ago with the guy who owns the automotive repair shop that I used back in Asheville. And I was talking to him, and he's like, man, we just got back from a conference out in Los Angeles where all of these, auto shop owners, they all get together every year. And he's like, in every single panel discussion, every breakout group, everything was about how do we get more auto techs hired? How do we keep auto technicians? Because people aren't going into the fields. Those that are there, they're in the good ones, they're in high demand, and so they can basically write their own tickets. The same thing is happening across all the trades, right? People don't want to do the work. They don't want to do those jobs. And I mean, I got friends who do those jobs. They make a lot of money doing those jobs. This gets now to the education system, and where are we directing all of the kids when they come out of the K-12? Do we funnel them into trade schools? Do we funnel them into colleges? That gets into the debate about colleges. And what are the colleges doing? This whole system that is built around debt, long-term debt, that is essentially employing a lot of people that got degrees in the field simply so they can teach. I think I mentioned earlier, a money laundering kind of an operation. It's very similar, it seems to me. Millions of jobless Americans lost their unemployment benefits on Monday, leaving only a handful of economic support programs for those who are still being hit financially by the year-and-a-half-old coronavirus pandemic. This is the AP business writer Ken Sweet. Headline: Jobless Americans have few options as benefits expire. One of those few options would be to get a job, just so we're clear. This is part of the part of the beef I have with the way media frames stories, because if I wanted to write a story, right, like this, I could frame it as generalizing everybody who is drawing the extended and richer unemployment benefits from the last, year. I could generalize everybody in that cohort and say that none of them want to work. But that would not be accurate. There are probably people that do want to work, did want to work. They lost their job. They're in an industry that it's difficult to look. I'm a talk radio host. These are not exactly the most numerous jobs on the face of the earth anymore, right? So I get it. I have been unemployed. I got unemployment, not during the pandemic, but I got unemployment in my life 10 years ago or so. And so I understand the need for these kinds of programs, right? The social safety net, for example. So I get it. But when I'm writing the story, I don't ascribe that motive to everybody in the cohort, which is usually the way the media covers this cohort. They always say, it's like, oh, these poor people, they just can't get the programs. That's the problem. If they could just get the program, then, everything, they get right on the right course and everything would be okay. And that's not true for all of the people. I don't even know, by the way, if it's a majority. I honestly don't. But there's always there's the view that infects the stories. And this is the view, that millions of people lost their benefits, leaving only a handful of economic support programs for those who are still being hit financially by the year-and-a-half-old coronavirus pandemic. They're still being hit financially. That's everybody in the cohort. And they only have a handful of these programs. There's just a handful of them. That's not enough. Whatever the handful of programs is, it's not enough for these people who have been so hit by the pandemic. Is it possible that there are a lot of people that are actually making a more rational decision and saying, I take more money home being on unemployment than I did when I was working at my job that I hated? And so they don't want to go back to work? Here's something else, too. I used to work in the service industry. Ryan actually still does part-time. But I can tell you there are a lot of people in the service industry that enjoy, shall we say, the benefits of the lifestyle. Oh, what's that chuckle for? Ryan seems to understand what I mean when I say that. He just did it again. See that? So for folks who aren't aware, there is a certain lifestyle. Now, I'm not talking about running a daytime lunch service or a lunch counter kind of an operation. That's a different kind of lifestyle, okay? But if you're working evenings and you're closing down the restaurant/bar at, 11 o'clock, you're getting home at midnight or so after work, you're going out, you're partying, you're trying to meet up with all the friends that don't work in the service industry, which they work different hours, and so they're out partying. They're already well into their 6-pack of beer, so you got to kind of catch up, which then kind of opens the door to different, shall we say, substances. Right? There's an entire culture, and there are a lot of people in that culture that if you say, hey, here's a whole bunch of money, you don't have to work, but you still get to live the culture. You can still get to live in the culture, live that lifestyle. A lot of people in the industry, they're going to take that deal. They're going to take that deal. Is that helping them or hurting them? Economists Peter McCrory and Daniel Silver of J.P. Morgan found, quote, zero correlation between job growth and state decisions to drop the federal unemployment aid, at least so far, they say. An economist at Columbia University, Kyle Coombs, found only minimal benefits. Again, this is the AP, which estimates that roughly 9 million Americans are going to lose all or some of the benefits, while the White House has encouraged states to keep paying the $300 weekly benefit by using money from stimulus bills. No states have opted to do so. Some states, as I just said, had already stopped taking the federal money. North Carolina lawmakers tried to do so as well, but that was blocked. So The amount of money injected by the federal government into jobless benefits since the pandemic began is nothing short of astronomical. The roughly $650 billion. $650 billion. That's $10 billion per state. This, according to the Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, kept millions of Americans who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. No, through the government's fault. Like, that's why they lost their jobs. Government cost them their jobs. Government closed down the boss, closed down the business. So it kept them in their apartments, paying for food and gasoline and keeping up with their bills. The banking industry has largely attributed the new defaults on loans this past 18 months to the government relief efforts, the few defaults on loans, right? So look, GovCo's been bailing everybody out. Yay! There's a story out of Asheville, WLOS TV, reporting that more than a dozen people face federal charges. More than $3.4 million has been seized by federal grand juries. Charges are now pending. This is all part of their story that more than a dozen people are charged in pandemic fraud in the Western District, U.S. Attorney's Western District, that includes Asheville, but also Charlotte. In North Carolina, for example, 24-year-old Jasmine Clifton recently pleaded guilty to wire fraud. Clifton, from Charlotte, submitted an online fake loan application to the SBA for an economic injury disaster loan using a fake online retail business. Investigators say Clifton used the $149,000 for a shopping spree at several diamond and luxury stores. She's facing 20 years in prison and $500,000 in fines. The Western District Federal Court includes Asheville and Charlotte, had the majority of the cases. All 13 were charged in Charlotte. I'm just as shocked as you are that when you open up a multi-trillion-dollar spigot that people would take advantage of it for nefarious purposes. I could not see that coming. This story from the News and Observer, headline, Oxfam ranks North Carolina as the worst state in America for wages and worker protections, which I'm not sure that the millions of people that keep moving here were aware of this. Maybe we need to promote this story. Get the word out. This is a terrible, terrible state to work. Please stop coming. When it comes to wages, unemployment benefits, and laws set in place to protect and support workers, North Carolina is the worst state. This dead last 52nd... Wait a minute. We got 52 states now? Oh, they're including Washington and Puerto Rico. Okay. So we are dead last, 52nd, in the best and worst states to work in America 2021 report. It was released by Oxfam America, a national charity organization that focuses on labor policy and human rights. The index ranks states by assigning scores in 3 areas: wage policies, worker protection policies, and right to unionize policies. So it's just based on policies. And so if you have the right policies that Oxfam likes, then you're going to rank higher on their list. And guess what kinds of policies Oxfam likes? Yeah, not conservative ones. And so I actually think this is worth celebrating. We're number one. We're number one. We have the least amount of stupid policies on the books in America. Yay, North Carolina. I know I just said that, and now I've attracted another million people to the state. The other bottom 5 states were also in the South, with Georgia in 51st place, Mississippi 50th, Alabama 49th, and South Carolina at 48th. Virginia ranks as 23rd. It's the only southern state in the upper half of the index due to new worker protection laws, including a raised minimum wage that got approved by the legislature and the racist blackface or Klan outfit wearing Governor Ralph Northam. North Carolina ranks so low because it, quote, doesn't invest in its workers. This according to Oxfam. We have the second to last in wages ranking because the minimum wage is $7.25, and that has been unchanged since 2009. The average, by the way, the unemployment, like if you're the people who make not unemployment, the people who make minimum wage, like they're kids. Which, by the way, I got a family member who's like 14 years old. Kid went out trying to find a job. Nobody would hire him. Nobody would hire him because of his age. And he's willing to work. They need workers. And he's like, oh, score, I'm going to go get a job. Nope, sorry, kid, you're 14. Can't work. Won't let him work. It's crazy. But no, you're not supposed to make minimum wage for the rest of your life. That's supposed to be the minimum wage. You start off with that, and then you make more than that. And from what I understand, you heard from the earlier caller, they're not, restaurants aren't paying minimum wage to people, right? They're paying more than that because they need people. Much of the policies criticized by Oxfam concern the legislative power of the North Carolina General Assembly and the regulatory power of the North Carolina Department of Labor, both of which are Republican-controlled. Pat Ryan, spokesman for the Senate leader Phil Berger, dismisses the report as a trivial ranking of laws based on political leanings, which is accurate. Pat Ryan said, quote, this left-wing advocacy group that most people have never even heard of simply doesn't like the policies that North Carolina Republicans have adopted. There's no rigorous statistical analysis here. They're just giving high scores to laws they like and low scores to laws that they don't like, which is probably why just about every Democrat-run state has a high score and every Republican-run state has a low score. Right. That's it. But Oxfam, they got their study published, this big story in the News and Observer, written by Aaron Sanchez Guerra, who I think is a business reporter or something. But that's how you get a narrative into the public psyche, right? Into the public square. It's how you essentially idea launder. You put out look, I'm going to say this is probably going to anger some people, but Wallet Hub, same thing. I know everybody's like, oh, a Wallet Hub study. Like, okay. You realize the purpose of the Wallet Hub studies is to get what we call earned media, right? The free publicity is to get news stories written about their study. So you say Wallet Hub all the time. And that's why they put out so many studies, and they rank the states because they know that states all over the place are going to be interested in their rankings, and then the newsrooms with the reporters in those states are going to do stories on them and say the name Wallet Hub. That's how that works. That's what Oxfam just did. That's how they laundered that story. But now it's going to take hold as we're a terrible place to do business, even though we just swiped another congressional seat from New York State. So I had some sad news. I saw this. Michael K. Williams, Omar, everybody knows him as Omar. Omar Little from The Wire. Yeah, he died. He was only like 54 years old. And I knew him, so I saw him in The Wire, and I knew him actually better because I watched like all of the Boardwalk Empire series, and he was chalky white in that series. 2010 through 2014. He was known as Omar from The Wire. He was the guy who had the big scar right down the middle of his face. And this from, was this the AP? Yeah, the AP, saying that he had created one of the most beloved and enduring characters in a prime era of television. He died. He was found dead Monday afternoon by family members in his Brooklyn penthouse apartment. It looks like drugs. And he had battled addiction as a younger man. Let's see here. He appeared in the films 12 Years a Slave, also Assassin's Creed. He's actually up for an Emmy for his role in HBO's Lovecraft Country. And he has been nominated 4 other times, but this would be the first time. He also had some minor roles in Law & Order, as well as The Sopranos. He told Stephen Colbert on The Late Show back in 2016, the character of Omar thrusted me into the limelight. He said I had very low self-esteem growing up, a high need to be accepted, a corny kid from the projects. So all of a sudden, I'm like, Omar, I'm getting respect from people who probably would have taken my lunch money as a kid. He was born in 1966 in Brooklyn, the son of a mother from Nassau, Bahamas, and a father from South Carolina. He was raised in the Vanderveer Projects in East Flatbush, Brooklyn. He went to George Westinghouse Career and Technical Education High School. His first forays into entertainment were as a dancer for artists including Missy Elliott, Genuine, Crystal Waters, and Technotronic. I don't know any of them. And how did he get the scar? Do you know who this guy was? You know who Michael K. Williams was?
I do not know how he got the scar, but Michael K. Williams is actually the first guest that I ever booked in radio.
Really?
Yep.
Oh.
So my first station, so I'm from Baltimore, so the first station I worked for.
To The Wire.
This was either 9 or 10 years ago, so the 20-year anniversary of The Wire is coming up next year.
Mm-hmm.
And the hosts I worked with at the time, I had not watched The Wire yet when we were doing this, but we did a 10-year anniversary of The Wire being on the air, so I guess it would have been
2012.
Mm-hmm. And Michael K. Williams was the first person that I ever booked in radio.
Yeah, the series ran from 2002 through 2008. My wife and I just watched it all. She had never seen it, and I think I had seen probably like 4 of the 6. I think I missed like the first 2 or 3 seasons. So, so we went out, we actually just bought the...
A lot of people skip season 2.
Why?
Season 2 is a little slow for me. I
didn't know that at the time.
I've actually grown to love it a little bit more. But the first time I actually tried to watch The Wire, I gave up in season 2, and then I tried it again, and I've actually grown a lot more fond of it. But yeah, a lot of people don't make it past season 2.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. I thought because every season they would then shift and tell different parts of the story of the city. Like one year was about the newsroom at the local paper and stuff. One was about a particular police department and all this. So. A fight so here's how he got the scar. He got it apparently on his 25th birthday. A fight that erupted while he was celebrating his 25th birthday left him with a fearsome scar down his face. It goes right between his eyes on his forehead, and it goes right down, then it curves down the side of his face, like between his eye and the bridge of his nose, and goes across his cheek. And he told National Public Radio that he sustained the gruesome injury when he went outside to get some air during a popping party at a bar in Queens. I have no idea what a popping party is.
I don't either.
Popping balloons, maybe? Is that what a popping party is? Popping champagne bottles? Popping caps in people's butts? I don't know. What's the popping? Okay. I saw that 2 of my other friends were being surrounded by some dudes who I didn't know. And it looked like they were about to get jumped, he recalled. And I said, I'm ready to leave. Let's go back. I'm going to go back home now. But Williams said, this one dude kept pacing behind me. And he kept like sucking his teeth. I don't know what that, I'm trying to imagine what, am I doing something like that? Like slurping? I don't know, that'd be slurping your teeth. Anyway, he's like, what's up with that dude? Bro, what's your problem? And the dude wipes his hand across his mouth, and then what I thought, he smacks me in the face. But what he did was he spit out a razor. Apparently he had a razor in his mouth. And when he wiped his hand across his mouth, he put the razor in between his middle finger and his ring finger, and then he just went and swiped me right down the face. And that's what cut his face open. He says it was actually the first hit of the fight, so we managed to escape with our lives barely that night. But while Williams survived the attack, the gash from the razor blade created a distinctive scar that ran down the center of his forehead, crossed the bridge of his nose, continued across his right cheek, and ending right near his mouth. At the time, Williams was working as a dancer in music videos for stars including Madonna and George Michael. And I can't imagine him as a dancer. While the incident left him marked for life, it also got him noticed by the directors with whom he was working. He said things changed immediately after that. Directors didn't want me to dance in the videos anymore. They wanted him to act. That's how he...
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, that the scar actually got him from being a dancer to a movie star and TV star.
I have seen some of the videos of him doing like in the dance routines on Twitter over the last 24 hours. It's actually been pretty cool. There's a lot of people that have come out to say a lot of good things about him, like Isaiah Whitlock, who was Senator Clay Davis. Like, there's a bunch of stuff on... It seems like everyone that you would think that he was just on that show basically and some of those other shows, but there's been a lot of people outside of the HBO world that have said good things about him.
He was so the character he played in the show was Omar Little, and he basically robbed the drug houses being run by the gangs. So he was like, he targeted the gangbangers, and so everybody was always afraid of him. But he had a code, and that was his deal. And he said that was the famous line from the show, is that everyone's got to have a code. You got to have a code, and that's what he lived by.
One of my favorite scenes from the show is when he's in the courtroom, and the lawyer is basically criticizing him for basically profiting off of the drug trade. And then Omar Little's like, "Well, you're doing the same exact thing," and the lawyer just like completely caught off guard by it.
Yeah. So it's a really good series. If you haven't seen it, The Wire, and if you do, you'll know that Omar Little, that's the guy who we're talking about. His real name is Michael K. Williams. Passed away at the age of 54, and apparently it's, at least this is what the reports are, is that it is more than likely a drug overdose, heroin overdose in his apartment in Brooklyn. Very sad. We go now to the News Center, WBT News on News Talk 11, 1099.3 WBT.